Rob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, we all about that outcome. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. From Flushing Meadows, echoes bounce off the bat. Rob calls, take the mic, snaps like a thunderclap. Home runs over bridges, no gaps in the story. Mets rise, reclaiming the glory. 7 the city, blue and orange army swarm. Summer vibe electric, love in every form. From Biggie's blocks to Flushing's heartbeat. Our anthem loud, no retreat. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. The apple pops in the outfield, city of dreams. Rob's voice over static, Mets on every stream. White lines mapped out the future, vividly. From shade to city, the journey's never gimmicky.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Mets Talk Live right here on the channel and on X. And I know I took a little bit of a hiatus after the Mets decided to embarrass themselves in game 162 and have a disgusting season for us to watch and a typical disgusting ending for the New York Mets. I needed a little bit of a break. They were torturous to us Met fans, and I just needed a little bit of a break before we get back into the off season and all the shows that we're going to have coming up all throughout the off season. And this is more of a, I would say, a coping mechanism live stream where everybody have been, dealing with the playoffs without the Mets. And it is a little bit better that the Yankees and the Phillies are out. So those two fan bases can shut the hell up about the New York Mets. But now it's all about what are the Mets going to do to get this team where it needs to be. And they need to be playing in October. There is no doubt about that, guys. And that is something that we really, 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 really have to figure out. And, we got a whole offseason to talk about that stuff and everything that needs to come in between and what Stearns and company needs to do to get this team going in the right direction, because they went in the right direction for the first month and a half of the season, and the remaining 4.5 months, they were lost. There was no identity with this team. There was nothing that you can pinpoint and say, that is the best part of this team. There was none of that. That can happen. Coming into the season, I think a lot of us can agree that we thought the offense was going to be the best part of this team, and that was going to be the offense that was going to carry this team at least into the playoffs. Now, when you get into the playoffs, as you can see, sometimes it's pitching that dominates, sometimes the hitting that dominates. This year, it seems like the pitching has done its job. And that is something that you just have to figure out on the fly, especially during the season. Unfortunately, the Mets had nothing in their roster that you could pinpoint and say that is the best part of the team. And I think that was always the problem. We were always trying to find what was the best part of the team. And that's an issue. I mean, that is a sign of a bad team. That is a sign of a team that is not good enough compared to the expectations. And that is something that why it happened so quickly and why everything just unraveled is basically what we were all talking about. We all have a difference of opinions of who's to blame, what part of the team is to blame, what coach, what manager, what GM, what president of baseball ops, owner, it doesn't matter. The fact that they won 83 games and it only needed to be 84 wins to get into the playoffs, it's a failure by everybody. It starts from Steve Cohen and it trickles all the way down to the lowest coach on this team. That is the problem. And that has to change. Now, we know about the coaches being fired. And that's something that we all seen coming. I talked about it 2 months ago, was that if the Mets found a way to not make the playoffs, or even if they didn't play well down the stretch, snuck into the playoffs and got embarrassed in a wild card round, the coaches were gone. Those are the first line of defense. That is the first scapegoats that always go. It turns a blind eye to David Stearns and Mendoza. It puts the blame on those guys more, because more people should have been up in arms about the situation when it came to what is the real problem. I'm sorry. I'm sick and tired of people talking about coaches and they need to be fired. And I did hear Eric Chavez's comment in his interview talking about, I don't know if you guys heard, but he did say that he doesn't understand the philosophy of having two hitting coaches. And these were two hitting coaches that were established with this team. Remember when Eric Chavez became the bench coach for 1 year and Jeremy Barnes basically was the hitting coach? Well, he embodied his philosophy with the team. And then when Chavez came back as a hitting coach and was removed from the bench as a bench coach, now he had a hard time trying to figure out how he's going to implement his philosophy, but he didn't want to step on toes of Jeremy Barnes because his philosophy was already implemented. This is a situation where that is old David Stearns. He did not need to have two hitting coaches. Like, yes, you have a hitting coach. Yes, you have an assistant hitting coach. That's fine. But when you have two guys that have, I don't believe they have the same philosophy, but having two hitting coaches that are at the same level doesn't make any sense. And I talked about it. The roster construction for this team was absolutely disgusting. It was not good. The roster construction was poorly put together. And now you're hearing things from, guys who gotten fired, and Eric Chavez stated that two hitting coaches doesn't make sense. And I tend to agree with him like that. So, well, Steven, the Brewers don't have four hitting coaches. They have a hitting coach. They have an analytics hitting coach. They got an assistant, and they have some other analytics guy. I know they were talking about it the other day on the broadcast. They don't have four direct. I'm talking about having levels. Like, everybody has a boss. Then you got their guy under him, which is probably, let's say, the assistant manager. And then there's, supervisors. And then there's hourly employees. Like, that is how it works. There's got to be a structure. Same thing. Just because baseball makes millions of dollars doesn't mean it's different. It's the same concept. You ain't gonna have two managers in the dugout. That is stupid. Same reason why you can't have two hitting coaches at the same level. That's the difference. You can't have that. But the issue is that I don't care about the coaches. We act like the Brandon Nimmo's of the world, the Jeff McNeils, the Mark Vientos, the Pete Alonsos, the Juan Sotos, the Francisco Lindors, the Francisco Alvarez. All these guys weren't here through multiple coaches. Weren't here through multiple GMs. Yet it's the same bullshit we talk about every season. They get hot for 2 months, and they're embarrassing for the rest of the 4 months. Depending on what 2 months they pick out of the season, the other 4 months are bad. And that's why when everybody's like, oh, look, Nimmo had a really good year. Did he? We all watched him. We knew how bad he was. The same thing goes for all these guys. This goes for Pete Alonso. This goes for Lindor. It goes for McNeil. A lot of these guys. They have 2 really hot months. You can pick a month. Pick 2 months out of the season. They'll have 2 hot months that completely pad their stats, where they can have 3 terrible months and then 1 average month, and they ended up having a season where you look at the stats, you're like, oh, that's a good season. But we all watched. We're not idiots. We all see that they do this all the time. The same players do the same thing over and over again. There is no changes with this core of players. They do the same thing. The same way I gave a pass a couple of years ago for year number 1 to Lindor, because it was his first year in New York, is the same reason why I'm giving the pass for Juan Soto year number 1. I'm not putting him into that core guys because it's only year 1 for him. These guys do the same thing over and over and over again. And it's frustrating that people continue to act like it's everybody else's fault except the players. These are the same players, guys. I don't know if anybody realizes this, but McNeil, Alonso, Nimmo, those 3 guys have been here for a long time. And don't tell me that they aren't the faces of this franchise. They were for years. So don't hide from it now. And I've been getting comments because of the video I put up earlier today in regards to Alonso's demands, or at least reported demands, was just insane, where people are saying, oh, well, you know, how can you blame them? Look at the seasons they have. Yes, but we've watched it. Don't tell me that Pete Alonso didn't go cold for a month and a half. That month and a half was crucial. Same thing for Brandon Nimmo. Same thing for Jeff McNeil. Same thing for Francisco Lindor. That's the problem. These are the same guys that Met fans want to continue to keep, because there was no Met fan that said a couple of years ago that we should not extend Jeff McNeil. There was a ton of Met fans, and I remember this because I kept on saying a couple of years ago when they signed Brandon Nimmo to that massive deal, I did not want to sign him. There was a lot of Met fans that killed me for it. And now they're the same Met fans that can't stand Nimmo. So when you make the bed, you got to lay in it. And that's the problem that I just don't understand with a lot of Met fans. Take your fandom and your love for a player out of it. Pay attention to the common sense stats and the common sense every day we watch this team. And you're going to tell me that these guys should just stay together when they continue 2021. What happened there? What happened in 2022 at the end of the year? What happened in 2023, the entire season? 2024, if it wasn't for Vientos and Lindor, who finally showed something, this team would have had another failed season. And in a season where it was high expectations, this team fell apart. The important thing is, everybody wants to blame hitting coaches. I see it in the comments now. Stop blaming the hitting coach. I'm sorry. These guys do the same thing every year. It's not the hitting coach. These guys are well in their prime. You think they're going to change their approach now? No. They are what they are. And what they are as a combined core isn't good enough. That's the problem. People say, oh, you just want to get rid of Alonso because you don't like him. No, I don't. It's never said I didn't like Pete Alonso. But people act like he's MVP when actually he's very not MVP. There's a reason why he's never top 5 in voting. There's a reason for that, because he's another one. It's that this year was better, much better. But the majority of his years is another guy who is a guy who does well for 2.5 months, pick 2 months out of the season. He'll have a great month. I mean, like MVP caliber months. And then the other are average or slightly above average. And then when you look at his stats at the end of the year, people say, well, look at his stats. He was great. He had a really good season this year. Really good. Better than probably, I think this is one of his better seasons in his career. Even better than his 2019 rookie year. So, yeah, home run hitter, you're the same guy that just doesn't pay attention. So you just got to go. It's just silly. Like, that's the problem. Like, we continue to fall in love. And this is the problem with Met fans in general. And I know this because I see it every day. I hear it. I get comments every day. The poll says it. Do you like? I appreciate everybody voting, but guys, come on. 7 years for Pete Alonso is okay. 80% of you guys, but not in the comment section here in the poll here, but the one I posted on my channel. Nearly 80% of people said yes, they would give 7 years. Are you dumb? The same fan base that is going to complain 4 years down the line when this guy is basically a DH because he ain't very good defensively. Let's remember that, because too many people think that he's a good defender. He's not. He can scoop balls. That is his best quality as a defender. That's it. That is it. He's not a good defender. He can't throw a ball to a base. When he actually throws a ball to a base, we're like, oh my God, he did it. It's a shock. A good first baseman, you expect him to make those throws, not be shocked by it. This is the problem. Just because Pete Alonso is the polar bear and everybody loves him and he's homegrown doesn't mean that he is the end-all be-all. We've lost a lot with Pete Alonso. Why is it okay for Pete Alonso to get credit as the face of the franchise, but when things go wrong, it's blame everybody else but Pete Alonso? That's annoying. We all got to stop. Like, we got to stop. You can't give him credit, and then when things go wrong, oh, well, he's not the face of the franchise. It's Lindor. Oh, now it's Lindor. Okay, now it's Lindor. So you can't give credit. You can give credit to Pete Alonso when he's doing well, and he gets all the credit when they win. But when they lose, it's everybody else's fault. This is the stereo. This is the situation that people put on certain players, and it's hilarious to me. It just doesn't make sense. I'm sorry, but I don't want this core together anymore. I just don't. And unfortunately, and by the way, if Pete Alonso wanted to be a Met so much, why didn't a couple of years ago he signed the extension? You know why? Because I don't think he truly does want to be a Met. I don't think he actually wants to be a Met for the rest of his career. I truly think that he realized he's not the best player on the team anymore. And he would rather be the best player on the team on a losing team than the second or third best player on a winning team. I truly believe that. Truly 100% believe that. And I don't go for his nice guy demeanor to the media. I just don't. There's a reason why teams weren't willing to give him a long-term deal. And I still don't believe they're going to give him a big-time deal. I still think that 5 years is pushing it even for the Mets. I think somebody might give him a 4-year deal. I still don't think it's going to be the Mets. I mean, we are talking about David Stearns here. So we have to understand that we keep losing, and this is why Met fans, I think, enjoy losing. They just don't want to admit it. Too many of you guys. And it's getting to the point where it's like, come on. It's unfortunate because it's not about the player. It's about what can you do to change this core now? And there is two obvious answers. There is Jeff McNeil and Pete Alonso. Why is that? Why is that? Because Pete Alonso a couple of years ago didn't sign that extension. Met fans who want to give 7 years to Pete Alonso in year 4 of that deal are going to be bitching that you're paying him $29, $30 million for the next couple of years, and he's going to be a DH. Because that's what he's going to be in a couple of years. That is what he's going to be. And this is the issue. Like, people want to just enjoy a player, and that's why I don't think Met fans truly want to win. Like, I did not, and Truman, I was the one that was trying to explain about Pete Alonso last year. Is that his whole season was part of the problem, and if it wasn't for Lindor and Vientos, this offense would have been embarrassing. The core needs to be broken up, not because of certain plays. Listen, if we were able to get rid of Nimmo, I get rid of Nimmo and keep Pete Alonso. But you know what? Nimmo's contract is almost impossible to move. That's the problem. Jeff McNeil's contract is easier to move because it has 1 year deal with a club option. And it has like I think $100,000 buyout. So that is easier to move. Pete Alonso is going to opt out and be a free agent. Obviously, there's no ties to the Mets when he opts out. That is why it's the easiest way to move in changing the core. You're not moving Lindor's contract. You just signed Soto. That's not going anywhere. And Nimmo's contract is almost impossible. That is why I keep on saying it, is that if I had a choice, if it's Nimmo or McNeil or Pete Alonso and McNeil, which ones do I want to go? It's Nimmo and McNeil. That's obvious. It's not me being a hater of Pete Alonso. It's just common sense. But you can't move Nimmo's contract. It's very hard to do that. That is why I keep on bringing up Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil are the two guys to change this core and to move on from those guys. That is why. And people are like, how are you gonna represent or pick or find that production from Pete Alonso? Well, let's see. What about Kyle Schwarber? You probably only have to give him a 4-year deal. Probably nowhere near the money you're gonna have to give Pete Alonso in years. Right? So that kind of solves your production problem that everybody seems to be worried about. But let's say they don't get Kyle Schwarber. Let's say they get Bellinger. All right. I know lefty, righty. I understand that. All right. But the Mets hit good against lefties this year than they did righties, which is hilarious. But that's what they did. So let's just say they go after Bellinger and they get a guy, they want to use Ryan Clifford or they want to get a Luis Ariz, something like the or Murakami, right? You can use, if you don't trust Murakami defensively, because again, we all hear about his bat, but there's been some conflicting reports that his glove isn't great at first base. It's serviceable, but it's not great. Now, I'd rather have a good first baseman defensively than worry about his offensive production. But that's just me. But let's say you get Murakami and you get Bellinger. Let's say Murakami is not trusted at first base. You put Bellinger at first base, who is a very good defender and can play first base very well. And you can DH Murakami. So you kind of get better defensively. You get about 25 to 30 home runs from Bellinger. Let's just say on the low side, you get 25 home runs from Murakami. So right there is 51 home runs. Not only do you replace the production for Pete Alonso, you add 2 guys to your lineup that are good bats. So you extend your lineup. People are way too focused on just the one guy production from Pete Alonso when you can get 2 guys with combined production, but it spreads out your lineup. So all that nonsense of hitting or pitching around Juan Soto, which they did all year to get to Pete Alonso. And Pete Alonso capitalized on it. Great for him. But he was also terrible defensively the final 2 weeks of the season. He had a terrible stretch of defensive games the final 2 weeks of the season. That cost us about 10 runs. And it was in big spots. So, again, you can actually do that. People are obsessed with production, but sometimes the fit is better. Sometimes. It's not about Pete Alonso's production all the time, because if it was all about production, if you look at each individual core guy, they had really good seasons, right? So why didn't we win? And everybody can say, oh, well, it was the pitching. Yeah, absolutely. And I was a big proponent about the pitching. But Nimmo had his best year, numbers-wise, in his career. Pete Alonso had one of his best seasons. Juan Soto had the most home runs, all across the board except for average. He was like right on par, even better than his career high. Lindor had a solid 30-30 season. McNeil had a solid season. So this is 5 guys that had really good to career seasons, yet we won 83 games and we missed the playoffs. So what are we talking about here? Now, I think the pitching kind of blew up this whole thing, and I think if you had just even average pitching for the remainder 4 months of the season, we would easily probably won 90 games. Easily. We only need 7 more wins. That's average pitching. We barely got that the remainder 4 months of the year. And do I think the Yankees are going to go after Pete? No. Because I do think they got I think they could put Ben Rice at first base. And he's a guy who can hit 25, 30 home runs. So, no, I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to try hard to go after Tucker. And I think Bellinger is gone. So, Bregman, look, I wanted Bregman last year, to be honest with you. I did not fall for the bullshit that all my fans fell for when it came to Mark Vientos. Like, he deserved to get the starting job at third base. I understand why the Mets did it. But I didn't trust Mark Vientos. I just didn't. I think the league didn't catch up to Mark Vientos, which it never does. It for some reason in baseball, even with all the analytics, it takes a full year for teams to have a book on these players. And once they had a book on Vientos, they knew exactly what to do to exploit his weakness, and he never got out of that rut. He had 1 good month out of 6. So I wanted Alex Bregman. I didn't want Mark Vientos. I would have just thrown Mark Vientos as the DH. And I think that probably would have, I don't know if Vientos would have been a better offensive player, but I would have at least done that. At least you would have known you had your hitter in Vientos, who you know has power, and Alex Bregman is a winner. Now, he didn't have a season like he had in Houston, but it was still he was hurt for about 40 games, if I'm not mistaken. He had 20-something home runs. He had a decent season. He actually played well against the Yankees in the playoffs. That is what I want. I want somebody who can actually perform in the playoffs. And again, Pete Alonso is one of those guys. He does perform in the playoffs. So he has decent numbers. His limited time in the postseason, he has good numbers. But we can't not make the playoffs and waste years of Lindor and Soto not being in the playoffs, because that's when those guys shine the most. And John, I agree with you, buddy. If your pitchers can't go 4 or 5 innings, you don't deserve to win. I agree. I 100% agree with you. I was bitching the whole season. You can go to any pregame, any postgame show you want, any show you want to watch during the year, this year. I basically said about pitching all the time. Even when the Mets had the best pitching in baseball the first month and a half of the season, I was still complaining about the pitching. I didn't trust them because they weren't going deep into games. So I'm on board with that. But I also believe that the guys who we needed to step up the most failed in this lineup. So down the stretch, like Juan Soto had a rough stretch the final week of the season. Pete Alonso had a rough defensive 2 weeks of the season. Lindor struggled. Well, Lindor was okay, but he wasn't great. Nimmo struggled. Jeff McNeil was in a big rut. So it's not like the offense was like, scoring a ton of runs the final 2 weeks of the season. They struggled. Yeah, Paul, I was talking about pitching before the season started. I hated the offseason when it came to the starting pitching. I was not happy with it. So I was just not very happy with the offseason. With Alonso demanding 7 years, which, I mean, if a team gives that to him, it's not going to be the Mets. I'm telling you that right now. Steve Cohen is not going to step in like he did last year for 7 years. He's just not doing it. I'm telling you that right now. He's not going to do that for Pete Alonso. Now, he might step in if he sees that it's like a 4 or 5 year deal and Stearns is kind of, being the cheapskate he is. And then Steve Cohen's like, all right, listen, I don't mind going 5 years, right? If that's what it takes to get him, we'll get him. But I don't think he's going to go beyond that. I mean, I don't think David Stearns wants Pete Alonso at all. The only way I think Stearns wants Pete Alonso if Pete Alonso becomes an everyday DH. And we all know Pete Alonso don't want to do that. So, which I don't blame him. Like, I don't think that Pete Alonso, should just say, well, to stay with the Mets, I'll just be a DH. I don't think he should, personally, I don't think he should do that as a professional ball player. I don't, he has the right to say no to that, and that's fine. But I just, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting, with the Ryan Clifford situation in your minor league system, because David Stearns, let's trade 12 minor leaguers that maybe one of them in Gilbert is one of your top 10 guys, but other than that, it's lower minor league guys, mid-tier guys. But when you really needed more to help your team, which was the rotation, which was the biggest need, you shied away from trading anybody. And you also you kept Mauricio, Acuna, Beatty, Vientos, and you kept them on the roster the entire season, when Mendoza, who I know a lot of people believe didn't, and we'll talk about him in a little bit, didn't have a great season. I don't think it was as bad as everybody thought, and I'll tell you why later in the show. With the 7-year deal that Alonso is reported to want, I don't think he believes the Mets are going to do that. That maybe the report, maybe he did get it from Puma got it from Boris, and that's kind of like a scare tactic to do exactly what it's doing. And you know what it's doing? It is scaring Met fans, saying, "Oh my God, he wants that much." That's why Met fans are scared, and on the poll are saying yes, around 80% for the Mets to give 7 years to Pete Alonso, because Met fans are worried, because they think if Pete Alonso goes, the Mets organization folders, and they'll move to Wichita in Kansas. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the way Met fans are acting. Like, if Pete Alonso goes, the Mets franchise is closing up, and the franchise is no more. Like, that's the way people act, and it's far from the truth. So again, it's going to be look. I hate these type of off season. Like, I don't want to deal with this Pete Alonso nonsense when there's other glaring needs, because the Pete Alonso situation this year is going to take away from what the Mets really need to do, which was get an ace of this staff. That should be priority number 1. Pete Alonso should be priority number 3. It should be ace, bullpen, and then worry about Pete Alonso. That is where I'm at, because I keep on seeing how good pitching is in these games. And I laugh, because if the Mets would have made the playoffs, they would have got steamrolled because their pitching sucks. Dolo? Well, I think Stearns did a masterful job last year with Pete Alonso. David Stearns didn't wait around for Pete Alonso. Didn't we remember? He was doing everything he else needed to do. Now, I didn't agree with a lot of the moves, but he was doing other things to fill the needs and not worrying about Pete Alonso. That's what he needs to do this year. Pete Alonso should not be priority number 1. If Pete Alonso starts to be priority number 1, we're going to have a long offseason. And I'm not going to be a very happy guy in a lot of these hot stove shows that are going to start next week. I cannot deal with the constant conversation of Pete Alonso. There'll be conversations once the World Series, 10 days after the World Series is over. They'll have he'll opt out. The Mets are going to obviously, talk about his range of years or whatever it might be officially. And then they got to move on and do what they got to do. If Pete Alonso, this is what the Mets should do. Pete, go out there and see what you can get. But at the end, whatever's your best deal, bring it back to us, and we'll make a decision then. That's what the Mets need to do. Because, again, Sanders just brought up Munetaka Murakami. He's going to have a posting period where at some point you either got to sign him or you don't. Like, it's going to be very quick. Whenever that posting period is, I think it's around the winter meetings. Like, the Mets have to make a decision. You can sign Murakami, but that might take you out of the running for Pete Alonso. Now, maybe you shouldn't, because you can use these both guys as DHs, which would be fine, but I just don't know. That's the issue. It's going to be very interesting. It really is, because the Mets can't get handcuffed by the Pete Alonso situation. They need to get an ace. Like, I don't care about anything else. Now, we don't have a bullpen, right? We know Aaron Diaz is going to opt out. Now, it would be great if he doesn't, but I think he's going to opt out. At this moment, we basically have no bullpen, because we decided to sign all 1-year deals, and there, what is there, 1 or 2 guys in his bullpen that are left? So you gotta replace all those bullpen arms, and it's probably going to be more 1-year deals, because David Stearns don't give long-term deals to bullpen arms. He's never done that. So, Dylan Ross is a guy that will probably be an option for the bullpen. See if he makes the team out of spring training. Who the hell? Like, I haven't really looked at the free agent list of bullpen arms, and to go off of that yet. I haven't even done that. When we get to the Mets Hot Stove shows, we'll have more of that conversation then. But I don't know. Like, I really don't know. It's gonna be difficult, because I don't think anything else should be done until you get an ace, and you gotta work the phones on Sandy Alcantara, because Sandy Alcantara, the guy who Met fans, a lot of you just didn't want. And I remember those trade deadline shows. There were so many people like, do you see his ERA? He's not pitching well this year. Why do you want him? Why? Because unfortunately for the New York Mets, the 2 times they did face him after the trade deadline, he beat us both times. And one of them was the last series of the year. That is why you trade for a guy like that, because this is a guy that was coming off of Tommy John surgery. It takes time to trust that arm when you have Tommy John surgery. It takes time to build up that strength and to feel confident that no matter what pitch you throw, your arm's not just going to blow up. You had to do it. I said to do it. I didn't care who you needed to trade. There is nobody better than Sandy Alcantara that was currently on this Mets team. And everybody can stop me with Nolan McLean, and I agree with you with that. He looks like he can be that. He's not that yet. That was the problem that Met fans couldn't get out of their heads. Nolan McLean shouldn't have been the make or break of David Stearns not making that trade. I'm not saying trade Nolan McLean, but I guarantee you could have traded other prospects, a really nice package, and still keep Nolan McLean. You could have traded Brandon Sproat. You could have traded Jonathan, Jet Williams, maybe a couple of other guys to get Sandy Alcantara. You could have done it. But David Stearns and his indecisiveness of trading prospects is the reason why we're here, not in the playoffs. So it's just crazy to me. Ben's World. I have to look at the list, like trade wise, or doesn't matter. Free agency. In free agency, we know who's there. It's Dylan Cease, it's Framber Valdez, the 2 big guys. I wouldn't mind going after Dylan Cease, but I don't believe David Stearns is going to spend money on a starting pitcher, a top starter. So I don't think those guys are in play at all. So, Tariq Skubal. Yeah, but it's crazy. Like, again, I take Skubal over Alcantara. Obviously, Skubal's better, and he's a lefty, and I just like that. But what does Skubal have? 1 year left on his deal. Do you really think Skubal's going to sign an extension? That's a dangerous game to play. Dola, I'll still do it, to be honest with you. But you also have to have Skubal sign an extension. You can't trade for him and him play out that one last year and then become a free agent. You can't have that happen, especially if you trade McLean. Listen, would I trade McLean for Tariq Skubal? 110 times out of 10 I do it. And people are going to be like, whoa, I'm not doing that. Why? Nolan McLean isn't established. He's shown a lot of potential. but that does not mean that he's going to be an ace. So why would I care if Nolan McLean is traded? Maybe trading Nolan McLean will keep you with Sproat and Tong. Maybe it's McLean, Jet Williams, and let's say a Clifford, and you still keep two of your top prospects, pitchers. I'll still do that. Yeah, easy. Crochet signed an extension, but he still had, 3 years left to become a free agent? He did that because he knew he was going to get traded. So he leveraged that into an extension. Tariq Skubal, who is 1 year away from free agency, it's going to be very hard to extend him unless you give him a massive deal, and that's if he's willing to sign it. Because if he has a great year, he's going to be the top pitcher on the market. He's going to have probably 8 teams after him, and he's going to make a ton of money. So I don't know. Like, you would have to make that trade on the premise of Tariq Skubal saying he was signing an extension. So I don't know. So it's going to be difficult when it comes to that, though. But that's why I think Sandy Alcantara is a little bit easier to get. I think it's going to cost you prospect-wise, but at least you'll have Sandy Alcantara for 2 more years, and I think it's a club option in his last year in that contract. So you do have him for a couple of more years at a top-level pitcher. Again, the Tariq Skubal is going to cost you, but there is no incentive for him to sign an extension, except that, if he blows his elbow out in game 10 of the season, well, you're kind of a free agent with a messed up arm. Paul Skeens is another one, right? I think, well, he's different too. He's going to cost you probably everything, which, again, I'm still don't care, to be honest with you. If you're going to re-sign Pete Alonso and, Nimmo's still going to be here, Lindor, Soto, you keep it Francisco Alvarez, then there is no need for Ryan Clifford. There is really no need for Jet Williams at this point, because I just go after Bellinger, because you're not really spending money in the big starting pitcher market. You're going to trade for one. And Paul Skeens has a couple of years left on, what does he has? 4 years left on his rookie deal. So you don't have to pay him a tremendous amount of money for a couple of years down the road. I mean, you can always talk to him about an extension, but you don't got to worry about it. So all those prospects, now you can trade to even get more starting pitching. I'm all on this established starting pitchers over prospects. I know that's not David Stern's way of doing things, but it's not like Alcantara or Tariq Skubal are 34, 35 years old here. So I would do it. I would make sure that, if you can find a way to keep a Brandon Sproat, if you can, great. But if it's Tariq Skubal, I'm trading Nolan McLean. As long as I know that he can sign the extension, I'm trading Nolan McLean, because we can only hope Nolan McLean is Tariq Skubal. Shit. I hope Nolan McLean can be a Sandy Alcantara. But I'm not doing that. I'm not putting McLean on this pedestal that he doesn't deserve yet. He's shown potential. But that's not enough for me. Potential means shit. Haven't we learned our lesson with Generation K and Generation K 2.0? We don't learn our lessons. We love to repeat our lessons when they failed. And we love to go back to it like it doesn't matter, because it does. It does. It should never, no prospect should stop you from getting proven players in here that can tremendously help this team. That's the problem. And that's what annoys me. I am like, Met fans should be more mad about losing than worrying about goddamn prospects. Because, by the way, guys, there is no Paul Skeens in the Mets organization. There is no Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in this organization. All right, Pete Alonso. But you know what I mean. Top stars in this organization. I don't believe Jet Williams is going to be that guy. I told you about Acuna. I don't think Beatty's that guy. Vientos, Mauricio. I don't think that guy is that guy either. Until Mauricio can hit a breaking ball, he is barely a major leaguer. I don't want to hear about, I know I talked about Ryan Clifford, but I don't care. I don't, unless we know, like Francisco Alvarez was the #1 overall prospect in baseball a couple of years ago. Is he playing anywhere near that? He's one of the worst offensive catchers in baseball. Like, we expected him to be Cal Raleigh type. Supposed to be very good behind the plate. And I know Raleigh hit 60, but I'm talking about like home run wise, like a guy that's supposed to be an all around great player. He's nowhere near that. His value is done. And I don't even know if the Mets are thinking about, maybe they'll trade Alvarez. Because I am sick and tired of having a catcher that we need offense from. Like, I don't want to depend on my lineup get offense from a catcher to help my lineup offensively. That should be a cherry on top. Nothing else. So, I honestly, I go with Luis Torrens because I know he's great behind the plate. And if you worry about Luis Torrens' offense, then other guys that you're expected to do the job aren't doing their job. I'd rather sacrifice first base offense and catcher offense for great defense and put offense in other positions. Because we have a first baseman who can't throw the bags. We have a catcher who, now he was better when he came back from the minors, blocking balls, but I still don't trust him. He's worried about framing more than actually catching the ball. I don't want that. Put offense in other positions. And I get upset that we keep on talking about these prospects. I don't care. I don't care about Sprout. I don't care about McLean. I don't care about Tong. If those guys are stopping you from getting better pitchers in here, then David Stearns needs to be fired. He's not doing his job. Because he cannot talk to me or tell me in an interview that, Nolan McLean's going to be our ace. And I'm telling you this right now, guys. And this is, a look into the future. On October 12th at 7:19 on Sunday, if Nolan McLean is our starting pitcher in Game 1 of the 2026 season, I am not going to be happy. You think I was complaining about the pitching last offseason? Wait until this year. Joe, it's not about awesome and cheap. Let's ease up on Nolan McLean being awesome. All right. He shown a lot of good traits. He was very good. Very good. But don't put him at this level. Okay, he's cheap. Great. So why can't he be in number 2 behind Sandy Alcantara or a Tariq Skubal? Why not? So let's say if you do get Sandy Alcantara and Alcantara's your ace, Nolan McLean's your number 2. I think you'd rather have that than no Sandy Alcantara and put McLean there with a bunch of bums in the back of him. Right? Get Sandy Alcantara. You got him under contract for 3 more years. You have McLean developing even more, getting better by the day, and you don't put all that pressure on him while he can be a very good number 2 while you got your ace of your staff. And then when Sandy Alcantara's contract's coming up and it's getting to that last year of the contract, Nolan McLean can transition right there into the ace status if he becomes that. Because I don't care what anybody says. Nolan McLean didn't show me enough to be an ace. He was very good. But are you gonna push all the chips onto the table and saying, okay, I want Nolan McLean as our ace and be okay with that? With the other bums that we have in this rotation? Brandon Sproat, I think he could be a number 3 at best. I don't even think Jonah Tong can be considered in this rotation next year until he figures out his third pitch. Because if he doesn't find out the third pitch, he'll never be a major league starting pitcher. Maybe a bullpen arm, but not a starting pitcher. Can you trust Sean Manaea? Can you really trust Kodai Senga? Because that's what you're working with after Nolan McLean. You can't have that. You need to give Nolan McLean help. Espen, sure, he dominated teams that saw him once. What is it? One team that saw him twice? Good. Now they got a book on him. Let's see how he now, I think he has the potential to be very good. But the way you're talking about him, like we don't need an ace. Like, okay, let's go with Nolan McLean and the garbage we have behind him. That's not going to work. Like, we got nobody else that you can trust than Nolan McLean. That can't happen again. Didn't we watch this story all year? All we were told was Kodai Senga this, Kodai Senga that. Kodai Senga ended up being a disaster. And when he couldn't step up to the plate, David Peterson tried and he failed. And then we had nothing until Nolan McLean until what? Mid-August? You cannot. But Espen, I'm not talking about trading him away. I'm saying to you, don't make Nolan McLean an ace and tell me that that's going to be okay, because it's not. I want another pitcher with Nolan McLean. And if that means you got to trade Brandon Sproat, Jonah Tong, Jet Williams to get a Tariq Skubal, you fucking do it. Because there is no doubt in my mind that Tariq Skubal will help this team more than any of those other Joes that are potential good players. That's the problem. And the indecisiveness of David Stearns, I don't goddamn trust. He should have got Sandy Alcantara at the deadline. Everybody's like, well, he didn't get traded. Yeah, so the Mets have to fall in line with every other team that decided not to trade for him? Like, it's stupid. Sandy Alcantara should have been a Met. If that took Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams and Ryan Clifford, you do it. Because at least it gave you an opportunity to have that potential of Sandy Alcantara and Nolan McLean. You don't think that would have won us one more game down the stretch? I guarantee we probably would have. It's crazy. Yeah, and Joe, you're nuts. But see, here's the thing, Joe. I don't think it would have took McLean. I don't think it would have. I just think David Stearns is afraid to trade any prospect that is worth giving up. I think you could have done it for a Brandon Sproat. You know what? I would have given a Sproat and Tong. If it would have been willing to keep Nolan McLean, like, I would have found a way to give up what I needed to give up and keep Nolan McLean. I think you could have done it. And Joe, no, I don't want Sandy over McLean. I didn't say that. I'm saying you could have had an opportunity. Now, again, if the Marlins kept on asking for Nolan McLean, which I still find it very hard. Like, if it was straight up, I do it straight up. I do it straight up. Like, I'm not giving McLean plus. But if the Marlins only wanted McLean, you do it 1-for-1. You wish Nolan McLean is going to be good as Sandy Alcantara. And you know you're going to get 3 years of Sandy Alcantara. We have no idea what Nolan McLean's going to be. You know where you're getting for Sandy Alcantara. Yeah, see, I don't want Jonah Tong to be the reason why I don't get Sandy Alcantara. It's just stupid. Tong is for Sandy, great. I'll do it tomorrow. Because we can only hope Sproat will be as good as Sandy. And we can only hope that Jonah Tong's actually in the freaking rotation. Because he needs to develop a third pitch. And that's not going to happen overnight. That was his problem coming up. He couldn't, once one pitch out of the two that he had was a fastball and a changeup. When one of those pitches didn't work, He had no other pitch to go to, and that tertiary pitch, which was his curveball, isn't developed enough to throw it enough to feel confident. And that's where he got into trouble. And Dolo, he might, but you can't be afraid of that. That's the problem. Like, everybody else makes trades, and, it's okay. But the Mets do it. It's like, oh, this guy's going to turn into, Kaz Matsui, or he's going to turn into a Steven Matz. Don't worry about that. Yeah, Joe, I understand he had an ERA over 5, but he was coming off of Tommy John surgery. Did you see his numbers in the second half? He ended up beating the Mets twice in the second half. Like, that's the issue. Well, Brent, I agree. Still developing, but we're also trying to win. We all act like this core that everybody seems to want to keep is getting younger. They're getting older. Like, what are we going to wait until Jonathan for 2029? When Pete Alonso's 34 years old and Lindor's 34 years old and Serto's now 30 and, Nimmo's in a wheelchair? Like, you can't wait that long. Like, you got to start winning. You got to start making a run for a World Series. You can't keep on waiting for these guys. It doesn't work. Okay, Joe, trade McNeil and trade Nimmo. Now, McNeil's tradable. How is Nimmo tradable? He's got a massive contract still. Nobody's taking on that contract. And even if the Mets paid that contract, you have to give more in that deal with Nimmo to just get what you want. Yeah, exactly, Joe. You got to shake shit up. You know the easy way to do that? Get rid of Jeff McNeil and don't sign Pete Alonso. That's how you do it. Because there's no other way to do it. You can't just trade Brandon Nimmo. You got to take on, if not most, all of that contract for Brandon Nimmo and add prospects to get whatever you want. It's not happening. That doesn't make sense. I'd rather just trade the prospects to get what I want than trading Brandon Nimmo plus prospects to get what I want. You're just losing more in the process. That's the issue. So I think the Mets should go heavy after Sandy Alcantara because I think it's more understandable to David Stearns where you got him under control. Unless you can get Tariq Skubal to sign an extension like they did with the Red Sox with Garrett Crochet, even though Garrett Crochet had a couple of years left. But he already made that known while he was with the White Sox that he was willing to sign an extension if he got traded to another team. So he already put that out there. Tariq Skubal, we heard nothing of that. So, and you got to understand in Garrett Crochet's sense, he wasn't going to be a free agent for a couple of more years. So there was always potential for him to get hurt. So yeah, of course he's going to bring it out there. Hey, if you're going to trade for me, you better sign me to an extension. And that's what happened. You can't do that. Joe, you probably can't. Yeah, you can probably, again, you could say, yeah, you could get someone to take him, but you're not getting nothing for him. That's the problem. You got to add prospects along with Brandon Nimmo and paying his contract to get some. So Brandon Nimmo trading him makes no sense for the New York Mets at this moment. As much as I would like to get rid of Brandon Nimmo and Jeff McNeil, the obvious moves are trading Jeff McNeil and not re-signing Pete Alonso. That's the only way you can shake up the core because you can't shake it up any other way. Lindor is here. Soto's here. Nimmo's unfortunately here. Who's aging fast? Yeah, I know Nimmo's aging fast. I know. But again, the Mets put themselves in that situation. Nobody else. They have you got to be better. That's the problem. Like Nimmo is probably going to be, and this is the unfortunate part, probably going to be a DH in probably about 2 years, and he's still got a couple more years after that. So that's where we got to look at the fact that in this whole spectrum of what we're trying to do here, as everybody believes there should be a shakeup with this core, the easiest way to do it is what I just said with McNeil and Alonso, because it's very hard to do it that other way. Joe, I agree. Pete, 7 years is crazy. I think I think the Pete Alonso 7 years is going to be almost as bad as the Brandon Nimmo contract. I know that's probably going to piss a lot of people off. And you know what? People are going to comment during this stream and after the stream about that comment. But what indication says that it wouldn't be as bad? I don't think it's going to be as worse as Brandon Nimmo, but it's going to be damn close. And the reason why I say that is because Brandon Nimmo was a center fielder. He was actually a good center fielder and starting to become a better offensive player when the Mets signed him to an extension or signed him to that contract. Now he's a left fielder. You paid him to be a center fielder. Now he's a left fielder, but he's a bad left fielder. The offense is okay, but if you really look at it, he only has really 2 good months. His best months are 2 months, and the other 4 are average, probably below average. So, yeah, Joe, he could. But that's the thing. You paid him as a center fielder who was becoming a better offensive player. So I wasn't necessarily happy that the Mets signed Brandon Nimmo to that contract, but he was looking like a better player. Better offensively. He started to figure out center field, so it all was working. But within a year, you moved him to left field, and he's become a bad defensive player with no arm, and he gives you 2 great months out of a 6-month season. That's a problem. So it's frustrating, but again, if I had my choice, I'd rather find a way to get rid of Nimmo and trade Jeff McNeil. That would be the shakeup I would do with the core. But unfortunately, I don't think that can happen with Brandon Nimmo. Because why pay most of the contract of Nimmo and add prospects? Because you're not going to just trade Nimmo and pay the contract for basically nothing just so you can get him off the team to shake things up. It doesn't make any sense. You would have to package prospects with Nimmo plus money to pay that Nimmo salary to the other team to get what you want to help this team. So it doesn't make sense. Well, easy. That's going to be the issue, right? And I'm sorry, I'm trying to click on the comments. It's not working, so I apologize. So I'm just reading them as I go. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Nimmo had a big contract offer from Colorado. So that is why the Mets gave him that extra year to keep Brandon Nimmo. So, but that's going to be the thing. If the team comes for Pete Alonso and gives him that 7 years, what are the Mets going to do? But again, I already said what the Mets should do. I think the Mets should be very smart about this because priority number 1 and 2 needs to be an ace and bullpen. Pete Alonso is number 3 on that list. He shouldn't be priority number 1. If you're a Mets fan and says Pete Alonso needs to be priority number 1, you got everything off the grid. You just lost because you have no idea what you watched in his whole 2025 season. The issue was the pitching. If you're going to tell me Pete Alonso's priority number 1, take your Met hat off and go in the corner. You probably don't deserve to be a Met fan because you clearly didn't pay attention. Who's playing first base? I already said it. Why not go get Bellinger? Why not you do that? You know, all you prospect huggers, why not you get Ryan? Why don't you play Ryan Clifford? Right? Now all of a sudden the prospect huggers, oh no, we can't do that. No. Oh no, now you don't want to prospect hug. The prospect huggers, who are the funniest people in the world, are all of a sudden clamoring not to play the prospects now. You see how that works? You don't want to trade them, but when it comes time to actually put them in a position, whoa, can't do that now. You know, you got Murakami, the Japanese first baseman, which we know David Stearns is hot on his tail. You got Bellinger, who is going to be out there. And Joe, I agree. I would take Bellinger in center field. But again, situation might happen where you might have to put Bellinger at first base. And that might be a smarter play. I don't think Bellinger's getting 7 years. He might get 4. So this is crazy. It's insane. And you know, Cindy, I'm okay with Diaz being priority number 1, but I think he needs to be like a 1A. Because I still think the ace is important. Because you can't get the Diaz if you don't have leads. And that starts with starting pitching, and then that starts with the rest of the bullpen to bridge a gap to Edwin Diaz. That's the other thing, Cindy. And I understand Diaz is important. He is. Absolutely is. But how many times this year that we couldn't put Diaz in a game because the Mets blew leads? Because their starters couldn't hold leads, the rest of the bullpen couldn't hold leads, and then Diaz couldn't come in because it wasn't a save situation. And he was basically mop-up guy for a while. You got to get to him with a lead. Too many times this year, the starting pitching and the rest of the bullpen blew leads that allowed Diaz to sit on his ass in the bullpen and not pitch. That's the problem. So that is why when I say priority number 1 needs to be ace, and if you want to use McLean in that with your 1-2 and then worry about the rest of the rotation then, all right, we can figure that out. And then the bullpen. Because we have one of the best closers in baseball that we hardly used, especially the last couple of months of the season, because we kept on blowing leads. That's a problem. So everything that we talked about, Alonso reportedly wants 7 years by Mike Puma. Where he got that from? Maybe I know he has a good relationship with Pete Alonso. I'm assuming this is more Boris talk than Pete Alonso talk. But again, Pete Alonso had really nothing to say all last year, right? It seemed like Boris prolonged all this stuff. So there you go. So 7 years, reportedly, Pete Alonso was looking for. The Mets core, can it remain intact after another failed season with this core? I don't think it's possible. I don't think you can do that. You need a shakeup. And unfortunately, the easiest way to do it is McNeil and Alonso. It's not popular, but it might be the only way. But Met fans who are in their feelings, who want Pete Alonso at any cost, remember I said this. You sign Pete Alonso. That means you are in bed with this core for the end of time, for the next 4 years of their best years. You better win, because there should be nobody complaining after those 4 years when they still all got 3 years left on their deal. In Lindor, in Alonso, in Nimmo. And you're going to complain that they're old and not as good, and you didn't win. Make sure you understand this, guys. You signed Pete Alonso. This core is basically intact. Basically, the only one that might be gone is McNeil. So basically, the majority of this core is going to be intact for the foreseeable future. You better be prepared if you don't win, because this core has done a lot of failing, a lot of losing, and a lot of choking. So you better be right, because if you're not, we're in for a very, very painful last few years of all those contracts. And then what do we do then? Transition, rebuild, because in 2020, I would say 9 is when you in that from 2026 to 2029, you better win a World Series. And if you don't, we're looking at a lot of old ass players that are past their prime, that have years on their contract, and there ain't much you can do with them. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting, guys. So with all that, Alonso 7 years reportedly wants. The core, is it going to remain intact? Yet to be determined. Rebuilding a bullpen that is non-existent. Diaz will probably opt out. The Mets have basically no bullpen on their roster because they're all one-year deals. Remaking the rotation. Not much you can do with all the guys you currently have, unless you make a trade for a Tariq Skubal, Sandy Alcantara, maybe a Joe Ryan from Minnesota. I don't believe that the Mets are going to go after Dylan Cease on the free agent market or Framber Valdez. I don't see Stearns spending that type of money on guys that are 30 plus. I don't think that's happening. But I do think you can make a trade for a big-time starter to put along Nolan McLean, and then you can work in your rotation with your 3, 4, 5, possibly 6 with a guy like David Peterson. You can find a spot for Sean Manaea. See if Brandon Sproat's going to be somewhere in that mix as well. You can figure out that. You can't be figuring out your 1 and 2 along with your other part of your rotation. It's going to have a hard time to win. It's going to be difficult. So, remaking the rotation, they need an ace. I don't want to hear about Nolan McLean. He's not there yet. He's shown a lot of potential, but he's not there yet. Please don't tell me that you're going to be okay with Nolan McLean leading this rotation and the same bunch of characters in this rotation that we already have on this roster and think you're going to be okay with that. You might think it's okay, but as I told you last year, it's not going to be okay. You're looking for trouble. Because if Nolan McLean doesn't have the expectation year that we should expect, you're in for a lot of problems yet again. You need stoppers in your rotation. You need at least one, but it would be nice to have 2. Somebody that can stop a losing streak. Somebody who can extend a winning streak. Somebody that can come into a game where you feel confident they're going to throw a gem. We didn't have that last year. And that was the most frustrating part. With all that being said, I think, and I think it's been reported, but I think Mendoza is going to be on the hot seat this year. I think Mendoza had a really rough go. I don't think he had a good season by any means, but I also think his roster construction from his president of baseball ops, David Stearns, was terrible. I think he did a bad job putting his roster together. He constantly was moving bullpen pieces day by day, optioning guys every single day. Mendoza never had a consistent bullpen. Anytime. It was constantly new people every single day, it felt like. You can't have a manager figure out a bullpen when you constantly put new names in a bullpen almost every day. That is very difficult to navigate. Not saying that Mendoza had a good season. He didn't. There was a lot of decisions I didn't like. But when you give him a bullpen with new names every day, with constant flux in a bullpen, that is a hard job for a manager to navigate throughout a season. Yet, you decided to put Vientos, Beatty, Mauricio, and Acuna on the same roster that all play the same positions, and you expect Mendoza to figure out who to play and when to play. If you played 2 guys, they didn't perform, you had to put other guys in. So you gave Mendoza too many options that he felt obligated to play these guys and didn't want to leave top prospects on the bench because that ain't helping anybody. It ain't helping them develop, and it ain't helping us win. So another bad job by David Stearns. Then, the starting pitching was so bad that Mendoza had no choice but to go to their bullpen in the 5th inning, the 4th inning. It seemed like every day. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the best manager in baseball. How do you navigate all of that and think you're going to be having a great season decision-wise from Carlos Mendoza? So as much as I'm not putting all the blame on Mendoza, he deserves some. A lot of it, if not 90% of it, is David Stearns. But I think Carlos Mendoza is probably going to have a 2-month window, about 50 to 60 games, where if the Mets are not playing well, and I'm talking about if they're like 5, 6 games over, maybe even 10 games under 500 in the first 2 months of the season, Mendoza's cooked. He's getting fired. So I think Mendoza has about 60 games, April and May, to show winning. Now, if you talk about this year and he had 60 games, the Mets were the best team in baseball. So it's hard to navigate that. But because it ended so badly, Mendoza has to be on the hot seat. Somebody's got to be accountable here. Unfortunately, another scapegoat is the manager. And if the Mets are not playing well, and I think the first 50 to 60 games, Mendoza's probably going to get canned. Now, that's going to make an interesting decision because who's the bench coach? We've heard names like Carlos Beltran. We heard names like Edgardo Alfonso, guys like that. Hitting coaches like Manny Ramirez. Whoever's the bench coach is going to take that interim job. So Mendoza, I think, is going to be on a hot seat. I think you need a bench coach that is going to be ready to step in just in case of that. And listen, Carlos Beltran was the manager for the Mets for what, 48 hours, 72 hours? And then he got canned because of the scandal. Whoever that may be, they better be the right guy. There better be somebody that knows what the hell they're doing, because you can't have another failed season. Because honestly, if the Mets don't make the playoffs next year, David Stearns needs to be gone. There is no time to waste here. He doesn't deserve to be here a third year. He just doesn't. So with that said, guys, I want to thank you for watching Mets Talk Live right here on the channel and on X. It's been a little bit of, about a week since I've done any stream lives, just trying to kind of calm down after the Mets debacle of a season and embarrassment. Had to calm down a little bit, right? I had to get into football a little bit. Hockey just started. So I'm trying to, transition into the winter sports a little bit, fall winter sports. So, but starting next week, I'll do some videos here and now. I'll probably do another live stream later this week. But starting next week, which will probably be Sunday or Monday, Mets Hot Stove will begin. So once again, another Mets Hot Stove on the docket for the offseason. Going to start the whole episode podcast all over again next Sunday or Monday. Mets Hot Stove. Of course, it's not going to just be just me. It might be Chris, Hector, other guys, all the content creators. See if we get as many people as possible to join Hot Stove episode number 1, just to get it going a little bit, talking about free agents, trades, what the Mets need, and all that fun stuff. So thank you for tuning in to Mets Talk Live right here on this Sunday. I know it's a football Sunday, but you guys been great. Well over 100 people in the chat on X and YouTube, so I do appreciate that, guys. So I'll see you next time on probably another Mets Talk Live later in the week. And then, of course, Mets Hot Stove starting next week. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday, guys. Enjoy the work week. I'll see you later this week on another live stream, Mets Talk Live. Thank you for watching, guys. As always, Mets fans, let's go Mets. Hit that like button, guys. Subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you next time, guys. Have a great night.
Bob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, we all about that outcome. This our time, this our cheer. Mets Talk Live, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear.